All right, welcome everyone. Hope your Tuesday is off to a great start. Super excited today to be having this webinar, which is really going to be more of just a great chat with a couple of great people. Happy to be doing this with Glassdoor. Glassdoor helps employers find informed candidates at scale through effective recruiting solutions like job advertising and employer branding products, but I'm sure all of you already knew that, and we are Lattice. We make performance management and employee engagement software for small, medium, and even some large customers. We are super excited today to be chatting about employee engagement with Gray Hollybar and Kay Bandoy. So we are mostly going to spend the time in sort of structured discussion. We're going to save some time at the end for Q&A, so please do feel free to drop any questions that you have into the chat. My colleague Aaron will be here, and we will be on those questions, and we'll answer them at the end. But before we get started, I want to turn it over to our two guests today, just to give us a quick, 30-second background on yourself, how you came into the role that you are, and what you're currently doing. So, Gray, maybe if you could start us off.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Gray. I work at Artsy on our people operations team. My title is People Strategy Lead, which you probably haven't heard before, but you can think of me as all of Artsy, as well as the person who builds all of our business partnership-oriented programs and initiatives at the company. I have been at Artsy for around 5 years, so I really grew up here. I started when the company was around 40 people, and we've grown to the mid 200s at this point. And so starting out on a team of 2 on the operations team, sort of doing everything, into taking on recruiting, giving that away again, and ending up in a more specialized role right now. So I've been lucky to dip my toes into a lot of things.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Kay. I work for Thirdbridge. Similar to Gray, I've also grown up at Thirdbridge. I joined us when we were about 50 people, and we're now upwards of 800, which is crazy. What I do now is I lead our people development team globally. I actually started out as a people manager within the sort of research team at Thirdbridge. In that role, I realized that I really enjoyed seeing people just generally get better at being a professional, and wanted to do that full time and at a larger scale, hence sort of shifting into doing what I'm doing now.
Awesome. Well, super excited to have you both. These backgrounds are awesome, and I think this is something that hopefully a lot of our listeners are relating to, of starting at a particular size, and almost inevitably the company changes a lot. But there are some constants that we think about throughout, and engagement is one of the big ones we're going to talk about today. And before we go into details around it, I just think that it's useful, particularly because employee engagement is somewhat of a nebulous term, and different people can mean different things when they say it. So I would be curious, not necessarily a dictionary definition, but when you talk about employee engagement, could you share what each of you mean or are thinking about?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
To me, I define it as having your employees be sort of emotionally connected to whatever it is that you're trying to do. Now, each individual would find that connection through a different means. Maybe it's you're connected to the close team that you're working with. Maybe you're connected to the overall vision of the company. Maybe you're connected to whatever the product is. Whatever that is, each employee would, have some sort of emotional connection to whatever it is that they're doing in their day-to-day. So to me, that's how I define it, and that's how I think about, is this strategy going to work? What sort of connection can this provide for people?
Got it. I like that a lot. Great. How do you think about it?
I would use different words, but a really similar idea. I like one of the definitions that I've really liked is the one that Culture Amp has espoused, which focuses on intrinsic motivation. So if someone is engaged with their work or with their company, they are intrinsically motivated to do that work, to work hard for this company, to stick around for a while. And I think the important piece here is that it's intrinsic motivation, I think, sort of speaks to that emotional connection Kay was just talking about. There has to be something that is authentic from your own perspective that really drives you to participate in this organization or this community. as opposed to your motivation being entirely dependent on your salary or something like that, where like if that changes, then you're just out the door. There has to be more sort of a personal anchor keeping you there.
Yeah, I like both of those a lot. We talk about it as willingness to bring one's best self to work, sort of. And I think that that's very connected to what both of you were saying, that you don't bring your best self when it's about the salary or when you're doing it because someone told you to do it. It's when you're, got the emotional connection that Kay was talking about, or, sort of Gray, when you have that deeper sort of feeling. So I guess one of my first questions is like, how do you create that? Some people do this through mission and vision. Is it about repeating that? Does this happen at the start of the hiring process? Is it sort of in concert with perks and benefits and some of the things that some people would describe as frivolous, but some employees would describe as important? I would be very curious to hear what you think actually drives sort of sustainable engagement. Gray, maybe I'd be curious to hear what you sort of think on that.
Yeah, I think it really does all start with hiring. I think all people work starts with hiring, right? The reason that recruiting is such a magical and difficult job is that, you're really aiming for the right person in the right role at the right time in the right community. We could go on with different factors. If you really can get every single piece of that all aligned, you have a lot of runway before you sort of have to like shore up engagement down the line, before you have to deal with sort of other issues. And when someone like in my role who is working with a team or is working with a person who is unhappy, or we're sort of like shifting gears and we have to do some change management, whatever the work might be on my end, that often comes because it's really, really hard to hire perfectly every single time. That's just not realistic. And so I think true long-term engagement really does, like you can fend off a lot of needed engagement work by getting the right person into the right role. For me, beyond that, if I sort of, move on from our glorious recruiters at this point, I think for me, engagement is made a whole lot easier with clarity. And clarity is a word that I probably use too much, but if you are clear on what you want in your work, if you're clear on the mission and vision of the company, if you're clear on what your role is, if you're clear on your relationships with your colleagues, all of that stuff is sort of like if you have all of that and it aligns, you're engaged, basically. That sort of is a little bit, again, of an unrealistic world. Like stuff it doesn't get all that clear all the time. This is the reason that we work hard on being good communicators, is because we have to really invest in that clarity. And I think as a result of this idea, I think that in many cases when you're working on engagement or you're working on investing in engagement, I look outside of things like perks or benefits or things like that to help with engagement. I look at like, let's clarify what your job actually is and make sure that you want it. And like, that's where the core of the work happens. It's really around that clarity of alignment.
So if I were to summarize what you said, which I love, it's almost that the real key is that you find alignment back in the recruiting process, and that like if you bring the right people into the right role, they're going to be set up for success. And then if that sort of gets out of whack, it's having a conversation to reestablish that sort of like consistency and clarity. This is actually really similar to something I heard from Stripe, which was that like they believe that happy employees start just, hire happy people who want to be working on what you're working on, and everything else works out. That always stuck with me too.
Yeah, I think, stuff changes, and that's good, and that is necessary. Sometimes you have to change, and people change, or the company changes. So that you also need to realize that you can hire someone perfectly, and then it's not going to be perfect in 12 months, and that's okay. But yeah, it starts there.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to that concept later of when is lack of engagement okay. But on this topic, Kay, something we talked about a little bit when we chatted the other day was onboarding. And you've been hiring a ton at Thirdbridge, and so you go through this recruiting process. I assume that you also are looking for people who are well aligned with your company. But then what do you do when they get there? Like, what does like a first great 90 days look like? Like, what do you focus on for setting those sort of kind of first sort of moments up for success?
Yeah. So actually, our strategy focuses a lot, not just on, hey, what do we do with the new joiners, through the door. We do so much work in preparing the people that they interact with in their day-to-day to make them feel welcome and to align everybody on what the goals are, i.e. not just their line managers, the people that sit next to them. They're managers of managers. So actually, our onboarding program is quite extensive. It's 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, you interact with, I would say, upwards of 15 different managers in different departments. And on top of that, peers of around the same level as you, or you're shadowing them, or you're performing a task with them. So for us, it's the onboarding is not just a people ops or a people development thing. It's actually, hey, business, we've, put so much work identifying these people for you. Now, let's work together to make sure that they're onboarded.
So you focus on integrating them into the company as quickly as you can. Absolutely.
Integrating them, and also just putting a lot of emphasis on where to access resources, whether that's information that lives on Slack or our intranet, or just individuals, just making them aware who their people are that they can share.
Yeah. One of the things I can't remember if we talked about it, but we might have, is like giving people a chance to succeed quickly and getting them on like a winning project as fast as you can. I always like that. Like just getting people into the sort of mix of things as fast as possible seems effective.
Absolutely. And we, with our research teams, i.e. the bulk of our hiring, we do a lot of role plays where they do it in front of each other. And typically, it's very scary, but shortly after they do that, they get so much, recognition out of that. And it gives them that sense of achievement, even before they start actually working on projects. So sort of, even if it isn't a live project, we find ways to emulate it during onboarding.
Yeah, I love this. So, I mean, I couldn't agree more that, sort of what Gray was talking about, that in the recruiting process, finding people who are sort of aligned, and then at the beginning, just getting them into the mix as quickly as possible. I think those are great principles. So I want to bring up something now that I think is, I thought you both had really interesting points, but different ones when we chatted before. And this is around sort of the concept of like, what are like quick wins or low-hanging fruit activities that a company can do to boost engagement. And I thought it's sort of interesting to highlight sort of different philosophies. And I know, Kay, you had some specific things that you liked a lot. Gray, I think you sort of were, politely sort of, dismissive of that concept. So I'd love to hear from both of you how you think about kind of the quick wins or low-hanging fruit idea around employee engagement.
Kay, do you want to start?
Sure. So to me, I would give it 2 themes. One, almost crowdsourcing ideas from your employees. It's almost hey, we want to engage you. What do you want? What kind of learning activities do you want? It's literally creating platforms for them to share what those are, and then championing them. So a really sort of easy thing that's happened at Thirdbridge quite a lot of times is actually people bringing in external speakers for panels. So often it'll be around a topic that they're a little bit concerned by. So for example, it could be around diversity. Like, hey, I'm looking around me and there's, we're not a super diverse company. What are we doing about it? Of course, we would tell them what we're doing about it, but actually we kind of turned that into a learning event for the whole company. We said, hey, let's actually together learn about what we could be doing better. So, that's one concrete example where just 1 or 2 individuals literally posting in a Slack channel, kind of a very provocative question, turned into, we brought in 4 people from other companies and we literally asked them, hey, can you tell us more about how you drive inclusion in your company? So that's one example. I think, one, it shows people that we listen to them. Secondly, it gives us a barometer for what they care about, because you set up a panel about a specific topic, people turn up, right? If a lot of people turn up, suddenly you're like, okay, people care about this.
Yeah, so bringing in speakers, turning things like D&I questions into learning opportunities for the whole company. Those are sort of examples of things you think anybody could sort of do that would kind of boost engagement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have another example that we did quite recently, and it's my role is people development, so a lot of this is very learning focused. We had a study support policy whereby you had to prove that a specific course or a learning activity can help you get better at your job, and we say, sure, we'll give you funding. We thought, you know what, if we look at our engagement data, a lot of people are actually asking for other types of, benefits. We can't provide all of them, so why don't we use this budget we already have for what we consider, like job training, and just, expand the access to that. So now that funding, we didn't ask, we're not spending more money, that budget is already there. All we did is we kind of relaxed the policies around it. Now you can use it for, personal development, not just job specific training and that kind of thing. So that felt like a really easy win. It's quite recent, but already the uptake is quite massive.
Great. Yeah, those are good examples. And great. Maybe before you tell us, sort of another side of this, I'm going to give an even sort of an easier example to sort of disagree with, which is that at Lattice, we do like a Napa trip once a year as like specifically a way for employee engagement and for people to get to spend time together outside of work, which we actually really enjoy and do. I think that's like an example of one of these sort of, Kay, the ones you mentioned actually felt very developmental and positive, but I think there's examples of quick wins that people do, whether it's, bringing a particular perk into the office or doing a team offsite, or these things that are much more ephemeral. And so, Gray, I'd love to hear sort of another view on this too.
Yeah, so one of my aversions to the term quick wins is that often it's used to express a checkbox, right? Like you can do this and then it's done. And that is sort of what I resist a little bit, because engagement is long-term. It's about people and their relationship with their work, and that often means their relationship with their purpose. You can't work on that quickly. That I don't think any of the things that you guys just said I would actually classify as quick wins. Maybe this is a terminology thing where we should be talking about like deceptively easy wins or something.
Well, maybe give us an example of a quick win that you think companies do that you don't necessarily think is that impactful.
Yeah, something like changing a policy to be like dog friendly, right? And being like, this will be fun and it'll help because people will enjoy the workplace, right? I think that a focus on or confusing engagement with enjoyment or sort of like pleasantness, or also like, I think one of the things I loved about what Kay said, the second example, is that you guys were able to do what people actually wanted, right? Which is an inherent a closer alignment between your people and then the organization that they're a part of. And that helps engagement, like sort of full stop. I think when people think about activities or programs or even like benefits and stuff like that are classic or trite or not thoughtful, like they haven't actually been sort of tested against what people actually want. Those are some of the things that I see as being connected to engage, or people label them as engagement related, that I am suspicious of. It was interesting. I wrote down a couple of other things before this that I think are deceptively easy that do, I think, relate to engagement. And actually, I mean, Jack, to the Napa trip's credit, an offsite trip or day or whatever it is, getting everyone has huge impact. We've seen this is particularly, I think, impactful. Artsy has, I've seen a couple of questions come in about 100% remote companies. We're not at all 100% remote, but we have a bunch of global team members. And for the teams who have global team members and just for the entire company, that community, getting everyone in the same place has incredible immediate impact. You don't even need to have programming, just getting everyone together. That also can apply to like, if you have a larger organization or business within your company. For example, on one of our businesses, we're around like 85 people, which is the largest sub business within Artsy. And we have a management team for the first time within sort of one of our businesses. And they weren't talking. And so for the first time, just getting this group of leaders together to spend time together, brainstorm about work, not brainstorm about work, was really, really impactful, sort of just full stop. I also think that telling people, this sounds very simple again, but telling people why something is happening, right? Change management, I think, is something that goes like flies under the radar a whole lot. And then when you say that word, you think of like consultants. It's super, super important for all managers, and I think for all people to be really good at. Things change constantly, and this is where tiny little misalignments happen in people's roles or on teams, the work that you're doing. And if you don't talk about the change that's happening, if you don't label why something is happening, if you don't get buy-in and make people feel like they have agency to like raise up a flag or to just understand sort of the narrative that's sort of at play here, things can go wrong a little bit. So even just taking the time to explain a decision, right? Like those are the sort of like deceptively easy things where it might be, you might have to do some homework and be like, why are we doing this? And should we be doing this in the first place? You have to have integrity and authenticity behind that. But taking the time to do that is super, super, super impactful for people just being like, okay, great. Now I know what we're actually doing and what you're asking of me. I'm on board.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do think that explaining why is so, it's so easy and it is so simple. It makes your story consistent. It allows people to just share the truth, and it's what employees want. And it is so often tempting for managers or leaders to change the narrative or not explain it all because they think that people either can't handle the truth or will be scared. But the truth is, when you treat sort of your company like sort of, the adults that they are, they'll rise to occasions, and it's all a lot better. So we've found, I think that is so true.
If you can't explain a decision well, it probably means the decision isn't a very good one.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that you brought that up, Gray. It's so true.
Yeah.
Have either of you either had a situation where you've been working with a leadership team who wanted to spin a situation and not sort of explain it as it was, and you had to sort of work with them, or has that not been a struggle for you?
No, I think my company, because we changed so much, I wouldn't say that we're a role model for change management, but we are a millennial heavy company as well. So, and, our leaders know that. So if anything, sometimes we can actually over explain changes, but then expect to see the result straight away. Like on that topic, I think the one thing that we probably don't do well enough is reinforcements. We prepare so much for the big reveal and we tell everybody, and we expect it to be understood after telling people once.
Right, you have to repeat yourself so many times.
Exactly. And our managers are not used to it. They would say, okay, but we covered this in our Q1 town hall. I'm like, I know, but I can tell you, I guarantee you that people will not.
Yeah, this is one of the most unintuitive parts of management. Remembering that you have to say the same thing so many times, and just because you said it once does not mean you're, yeah.
I haven't had to fight against leaders to be more open. One of Artsy's core company values is openness, and so we tend to do pretty well. I think sometimes we move a little quickly, and so we're not always as thorough in terms of our communication as I think we could be, and that's an ongoing sort of, I think, skill that organizationally we're developing. And I think one of the challenges is that there's so many levels at which to be thorough. Is it company-wide? Is it team-wide? Which stakeholders? That can take some effort. One of the things I have, if anything, I think the pieces of hesitation that I've seen with leadership, or even just managers, is being afraid that people can't handle the truth. And so rather than wanting to hide something, being like worrying that there's going to be more drama than I think that there would be. And I think one of the pieces of advice that I always like to give in that scenario is that, from my perspective, the truth is never actually that scary. It's what you do with the truth. So like how you act on that, or how you manipulate it, or if you don't say it, that's what starts to freak people out a little bit. And so sharing, there was always a way to share exactly what is actually happening in a way that really is authentic to whatever transition is happening. If it's like a leader who's leaving, if it is a layoff or something like that, those can be really scary things that you might want to not really touch. Really delving into the core of why is this actually happening, sharing that openly and acknowledging the things that may not be quite as good and the opportunities that exist here, because there always are opportunities. Like people are adults. They tend to react well to that kind of communication. And I think helping leaders feel comfortable with that level of honesty is one of the things I think that people in my position can do well to just practice a little bit.
Absolutely. So we've been spending most of our time talking about how to create engagement. And I don't want to go too deep on the other side, but could either of you or both of you share times when it's okay to allow for disengagement, or to even encourage someone to really sort of seek out their truth and realize that they are not as engaged as they want? Like, how do you think about the other side of engagement, or are we always striving for more? Maybe Gray, if you want to start.
Yeah, I feel strongly about this. I think that engagement it's important to remember that there's almost nothing is the be-all end-all, including engagement, right? The be-all end-all actually is your company's mission, right? It's like, what are you here to do? And I think part of this is related to this idea that I think can fall by the wayside a little bit for people ops and HR teams, which is that people ops and HR are strategic business functions. We're here to help the business run. We're here to meet business goals, same as any other team. That's the reason that we're around. And so our end goals really are the business's end goals. Our focus simply is the organization itself, right? That's the medium that we're working in. And so, there are times when, and this has definitely happened at Artsy, where, we have sort of cultural golden handcuffs. So it's especially, I think, for Artsy works in an industry, the art world, that to put it lightly, isn't super known for supportive workplaces. And so for those who grow up in the art world, working at a place that is really intentional about our work environment is attractive. And it can be hard to leave that, even if you don't like your job anymore. And so I think I've seen people stay really engaged with the people that they're around, with the culture, with the company mission, even though they don't want to come to work and do the work that they're actually doing. And so in that perspective, the work that I think needs to happen is really helping that person figure out what isn't working and be okay with figuring out that it isn't actually working. I resist this sort of myth that you need to save everyone from departures, or you need to save everyone from frustration or change. I had a conversation one time with someone who was 6 or 7 years in at Artsy, which for us is most of our lifetime, who on her way out and sort of at the end of her time here literally told me, I just feel like Artsy has changed. And I had to kind of be like, yeah, that's okay. And it's okay for you not to be super happy with what's in front of you right now. That's legitimate. There's legitimate feedback that you probably are giving. It's also just that can be natural. And so forcing engagement there, I think, can be really dangerous. And that actually can, if you are doing that, I think that can erode a lot of the other great sort of cultural things that happen on teams. But of course, I think that the assumption here is then that you do want to you want natural attrition to then be replaced by engaged people. So this isn't, I wouldn't suggest that it's okay for a certain type of job to be disengaged, or it's okay to have only 10% of your company is always disengaged. That isn't sort of the idea that I'm here, but the idea that change is okay and that people's levels of engagement go up and down, that's an important reality to be comfortable with.
Yeah, no, I think embracing sort of the truth of engagement, and that it's not going to be this, what people came for at the beginning is going to be different in 2 years or 4 years. And I think working with that rather than fighting against it is important. Kate, Kate, do you want to add anything to that kind of concept?
I just want to support the last thing that Grace said, which is, coming from a company that has changed so much. I've been here for 8 years. I've certainly seen and known people personally that didn't like where the company was going, and it's okay, I think that is crucial. Of course, we talked about change management earlier. You do everything you can to bring everyone with you during the change, but it's normal, it's okay, and it's better for people to be doing something that they're fully bought into, whether that's within your team or company or elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna sort of weave into Q&A questions because I'm seeing so many good ones and we're at our 30 minutes. But some of these are ones that I wanted to talk about anyway. So one of the ones I'm seeing is directed at Kay, but I think it'd be interesting to hear from both. And the question is, in a large agency with about 3,000 employees, how does one build an emotional connection with each employee if people don't know each other, if they're spread across different locations, et cetera? So I guess the question here is, how do we think about remote employees? How do we sort of engage a workforce across lots of locations?
So offsites is actually something that we use a lot. Not just we don't have a full company offsite, got 800 people in one place, but certainly people in the same division in different offices, we bring them together. Not just, of course, you sort of tick the social box of they get to know each other socially, but during these offsites, we also kind of really make them work with people that they don't interact with day to day. So, for example, last year, we gave them a business challenge and we had them work with managers purposely that are in a different team to them. And, they had to work in advance of that offsite. So you're getting more bang for your buck, more than just, hey, those 3 days that you spent in this location. Another thing we're doing is we just started rolling out a management development program across Thirdbridge. And we make sure that satellite offices, smaller offices are included in that. And again, making sure that you have a mix of people in these programs. Thirdbridge is actually not that used to having webinars, and it's kind of a mindset shift I'm trying to instill in people so we can have these training type conversations where you're really engaging with your people versus just, listening to a meeting. So I think that's another way that we're kind of doing it. So,
great. Do you have any specific things that are different in between remote and sort of HQ employees in your basic processes? So things like onboarding or check-ins or performance reviews or engagement surveys. Are there any changes you make to your sort of core people management practices, or do you do it the same kind of across the company?
We try to do it the same as much as possible, but there are certain things that you can't. So for example, I talked about our onboarding program, which is 2 weeks with upwards of 15 people delivering classes. Our office in India has 25 people in it. So of course, you're not going to have that exposure. Same with our office in LA with 15 people. So what we do is, where possible, we actually fly people from these small offices to join our bigger offices. So for example, if you join the LA office, you would come to New York for 2 weeks, get embedded into your team in New York before you go back to your satellite office. So we do what we can. Sometimes we really give them that extra, we fly them to a different office. Not everyone gets that kind of perk. And, we go out of our way to make them really feel like, look, we're going out of our way to make sure that you get a good experience.
I'd plus one that one of the things that I was going to offer in terms of the remote experience is that we can fly places, right? We don't have to be remote all the time. We've seen a lot of success in helping just get sort of that FaceTime, that exposure at various points, whether it's during onboarding or it's at different touch points during a global team member or global office's sort of life cycle. And on the other side, I'll also caution against forgetting to visit global offices, right? So we've seen sort of pitfalls where a bunch of team members have been going through a particular city, but we have some team members and never going into the office, right? Because they're working, right? People tend to be really excited and proud to host, particularly because this is something they don't get to do. They're always the guests, and allowing that chance to happen, particularly if it's a member of leadership, can go such a long way to really just having that sort of emotional or intrinsic quality of engagement to be great, I was validated because someone cared enough to come and see what it's like to be me as this in this position in the company.
Yeah, Absolutely. I think the making sure to spend time face to face and that we can in fact travel is a good thing. I know that a lot of remote only companies will do like big annual offsites in Mexico with 150 people, and people say it's a total blast, and it's amazing how impactful just little bursts of in-person time can be.
Yeah.
Another interesting question is, what is the right celebration culture at a company? Is it possible to celebrate too much? Is there such thing as too much praise? Or what is the right way to express praise? Is it public? Should it be done at all hands? Should it be on a Slack channel? Like, how do we think about like a praise culture, for lack of a better term? Gray, maybe if you want to start.
Yeah, my thought about this, I think, is that I kind of feel the same way about praise or props, or sort of like a culture around that, the same way that I feel about positive affirmation and positive feedback. Positive feedback is not useful if it's not specific, if it's not given for a reason, if it doesn't actually tell you specifically the reason that this behavior is good, so you can keep doing it for a reason. Saying that was great is not useful. And same thing for wins, right? If it doesn't actually serve a purpose, if it kind of is like disingenuous, or it's done simply for the sake of doing it, that I think can go a little bit wrong, and it is too much, right? I also think that in terms of the type of celebration or type of sort of win that you wanna feature, I think about the needs of the company at a particular point. So, for example, right now, Artsy is thinking about this is a year for us where we are, as a company, basically trying to like increase operating leverage, increase our runway, get a little bit more serious about budgets and spending, and we've been very transparent about this. This is something that teams have really rallied behind. And one of the things that we've really been trying to do is to, in particular, feature great work and wins by showing why this is important for the business, right? So that we are making sure not to sort of like elevate or feature work that doesn't fit in with the sort of like the environment and the ask that we've already made for everyone. So saying, great, this is the reason that this is going to get us towards meeting our goals. Like this focus that we've asked everyone to buy into, we're going to celebrate this stuff that is sort of like has fidelity to this thing, rather than like this random thing that actually, if we celebrated it, would show that we're being a little bit hypocritical or something like that.
So aligning the praise culture to the goals is important for you.
Yeah, like what needs to be celebrated right now?
Yep. Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Great. I learned so much just listening to you say that, because at Thirdbridge, we're really still trying to find the balance around this topic. We once got feedback that we didn't celebrate enough, and that our people were working super hard. So we thought, look, let's recognize it when people work hard, when they stay late, when they put in extra hours at the weekend. But fast forward, a year or two later, the feedback we're now getting is, oh, you really promote a bad work-life balance. Of course, our intention is to say, hey, thank you so much for working extra time, but because we were not thoughtful about it, what we ended up doing is kind of telling everybody else, hey, you should work the weekends. That is not our intention. So I think I really like the last thing you said, which is being strategic about it.
Yeah, and that's a great, Kay, that's a tricky balance. I've experienced that and talked to others about that too, that when someone works really hard and does a great job, you do want to thank them publicly. But then when you thank that publicly, you are saying, oh, you really sort of, killed yourself to get this project over the line, like, way to go. And I do think, Gray, that framework that you talked about of how that connects to a goal helps. There might be cases where someone, kills themselves over a weekend towards a goal, and that can be difficult. But
why? Yeah.
All right, last question, I think, or maybe there'll be two more. Somebody asked about Glassdoor, and Glassdoor has been important for a long time. It still is important, and the reviews that employees leave have a big impact on employer brand. What, if anything, should, may you do to impact your Glassdoor score? Whether it's is it just through behavior? Is it talking to employees about why this is important? How do you both think about your Glassdoor score at your companies and your roles in those?
Yeah, this is hard. Artsy we have a pretty good Glassdoor profile, and we still have always struggled to like define a really coherent and effective like Glassdoor strategy, to sort of like keep that up over time. We've tried a lot of things. We've tried being really good about asking for a review at every anniversary, or sort of like stay interviews. We've tried just doing sort of like blitz campaigns, like, hey, let's come up with a list of people who we know are pretty happy and just like, or do a bunch of requests at once. The thing that I think has felt most authentic is basically developing a habit on the people team of constantly thinking about, great, who else is having a great experience, who else have I had a great conversation with, or who has accomplished something really awesome, and bringing it up as sort of in. I did this, for example, I just worked with a couple of our engineers on the engineering team who were really excited to use CultureAmp, which is a software that I own for the company, and send out this great survey of sort of about engineering skills, learning opportunities, all of this. And this was this really great collaboration. They're excited to sort of take on this like leadership moment for them. And that was a moment where I was able to reach out and be like, hey, like you guys are crushing it right now. You have a lot of enthusiasm for your work. And if you like bring your attention that like, it's really important and helpful if you can sort of give voice to what you're feeling about Artsy in an authentic way, and then helping them understand Glassdoor is really important so that we can keep this up. Like a ton of people see this, all candidates come and look here. If you want people to continue having the same experience that you're having, then this is something that actually is really helpful to invest in. Avoiding the like, hey, like we'll give you like a little prize if you do this.
Yeah.
I think that can come across in the wrong way. Helping people
consistent with your sort of like why and explaining like what's important about your actions.
We're not shady, right? This is actually helpful.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, and like at Thirdbridge, we've never done the, blanket campaign of if you leave a review, you get this, for a very similar sentiment to what Grace said, I think. So admittedly, we haven't done that much to really manage our Glassdoor rating. We care about it and we watch it because we know that candidates do look at it. But I think one thing that we started doing that made a bit of an impact is just responding to people's comments on Glassdoor. Not necessarily responding to specific themes that they're looking at. It's making employees realize that we pay attention to them. As with a lot of online public platforms, people leave feedback if they're either really ecstatic or the opposite. So if you're on the opposite side, you know that we care about it. So that's probably the one thing that's made some impacts. That we've noticed.
Great. Yeah, no, these are great tips. All right, well, we could talk for hours, I'm sure, but we are up on time, and so I want to make sure that all of our listeners get a chance to get back to their busy days. Thanks both of you for spending this time with us. Thanks for everybody who's listening for sharing part of your day. We will absolutely follow up with more materials, and we will pass along more questions that we weren't able to get to. And again, we just want to say thank you so much for the time today, and hope everyone has a great rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jack.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.